Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us today for our first Brain Matters webinar series, DementiAbility with Gail Elliot. Gail's presentation is called Wow, the Brain Matters. My name is Dina Boone, Public Education Coordinator with the Alzheimer's Society London and Middlesex. The role of the Society is not only to provide programs and services to people who are going through the journey of dementia, but to also educate and advocate. Today's webinar is supported by the Logan Funeral Home and Evans Funeral Home. Thank you to the owners of these businesses who are supporting this event in honor of their parents. Before we begin, I have a little business to go over relating to the webinar experience. Please note that your cameras are off and microphones are muted for the webinar. This event is being auto recorded and will be available later for listening with resources. At the end of the presentation, we will have a moderated Q&A session. We will do our best to answer as many questions as possible. During the presentation, feel free to add your questions in the Q&A box located at the bottom of your screen. You may need to move your cursor around to see the Zoom controls and icons. When you ask a question in the Q&A box, your name will appear as you have it displayed in your Zoom account. If you prefer to be anonymous, please pick the anonymous option before entering your question. Should you have any concerns, technical or otherwise, during the presentation, please type them in the chat box. Today, we have the pleasure of welcoming Gail Elliot, founder and CEO of DementiAbility Enterprises, Incorporated. Gail is a gerontologist and dementia specialist. She retired from McMaster University in 2012 to launch DementiAbility Enterprises, Inc., with a vision of changing the face of dementia, focusing on enabling abilities for people living with dementia. Gail's evidence-based, multidisciplinary education and resources have been adopted internationally and are helping individuals, teams, and organizations to become exceptional leaders of change in dementia care. Please welcome Gail Elliot to the first of our Brain Matters webinar series.
Thank you, Dina. I will now begin with my PowerPoint slides. Thank you to the Alzheimer's London Middlesex Alzheimer's Society for inviting me to share some thoughts and ideas with you today. Wow, the brain works. The brain matters. Today, what I hope to achieve is I hope to introduce you to how to think about the brain, the person's life story, the environment, and how this impacts behaviors in dementia care. I want to focus today on how you can enable abilities to achieve leisure and pleasure and meaning and purpose in dementia care. And while the focus is on engaging people in dementia care, I also want to acknowledge that at this time during the pandemic, we need to continue to focus on COVID and the guidelines for working in safely in the pandemic in any location where anybody resides. So let me begin. I'm not sure if anybody is already aware of the DementiAbility methods. These DementiAbility methods are focused on exposing the abilities of those in our care. These methods are person-centered. In other words, they focus on one person at a time. They're non-pharmacological. Why? Because there is no medication that can address the most common behaviors that we see in dementia: boredom, loneliness, lack of success, and lack of care and compassion, something as simple as knowing somebody's name, these are the things that contribute to what people label as behaviors. Labels are for jars, not for people. We need these approaches because these are the methods that are needed to engage people with meaning, purpose, and pleasure in dementia care. The things I'm going to talk about today and all the DementiAbility methods work that I do is based on evidence. It's all multidisciplinary and it's based on research and practice. And I help people through education using this as my base. So research plus education equals a change in practice. How do we do it? The reason this workshop is called Wow, the Brain Matters is because I focus on helping each person to understand that we have to know about the person. The first W is who. Who were they in the past? What do we know? What do we know about this person in the present? This information contributes to a key understanding about what we're seeing under observations. So who, past and present, plus what we see under observations, and this is where an understanding of the brain is key. This contributes to what we're going to do. And what I'm going to focus on today is the what we're going to do with a very basic introduction to the first, who is the person, past and present, plus our observations. We need to understand before we move forward that all behavior has meaning. The question is, what is it saying? So some people call it behavioral and psychological symptoms of dementia, responsive behaviors, personal expressions. It doesn't matter what we use as the term. The point that we want to focus on right now is all behavior has meaning, and it's often related to boredom, loneliness, and lack of success. And that's based on multidisciplinary research. So when we look at the brain, we look at the person's life story, and we look at the environment, we begin to see what the person needs. This helps us to understand behavior. So let's begin with a brief look at the brain. First of all, we need to understand that some memory is spared. I don't know of a definition of dementia that looks at the point that some memory is spared. When we understand what memory is spared, that part of the brain that is spared memory is unconscious memories. It's different than memory that's lost. And in a definition of dementia, you often begin the definition with loss of memory. Yes, that's true, but there's also spared capacity in dementia. When I teach DementiAbility methods, either to professionals or through the caregiving workshop, we go into a great deal of detail about how you support spared memory and understand support lost memory and understand spared memory. But for today, in the amount of time I have, I'm going to talk mostly about the activities I've created that are in the kits that many people in the Alzheimer's Society London and Middlesex already have. Other chapters also have these resources, and they're available on our website. But I'm going to help you to understand what they are, why they work, and what you can do to meet the needs of those in your care. So the wow, again, is where we begin. We're going to look at who the person is, who they were, put our observations together, and figure out what we're going to do. How do we do this? We have to understand their needs. We need to know what they're interested in doing. We need to know what skills they have from the past and what they're still able to do. This is called the Nissan model because it's needs, interests, skills, and abilities. It's the first letter of each of these words. We put the Nissan model against everything in the WOW model. Needs, interests, skills, and abilities. Let's have a closer look. When we look at needs, unmet needs such as boredom, loneliness, a lack of success. This is built into the activities we're going to talk about in a few minutes. And lack of care and compassion, something as simple as knowing somebody's name. And then what triggers are in the environment. We want the activities that we create to address needs because we teach people how to use them. And eventually, after they've been invited to engage in these activities, seeing the activity triggers the outcome of doing. They will be engaged. This is an important part of the formula of brain and behavior. And when we set these activities up, we want to make sure that we take into account the whole person. Do they want to do the physical part? Do they want to think, the cognitive thing, the part? Do they want to connect? That's the social. And we have to take into cultural and spiritual components as we think about the do, the think, and the connect pieces, which have outcomes for better mental health. So let's start with know the person. If you have received the book, Let's Talk About Me, let me help you understand how to put this book together. On the front of the book, and this is key to putting this book together, I'm going to talk about the whole component, each component part of the book. The most important part of this discussion is that this book, Let's Talk About Me, is not just for the person with dementia, it's also for those who provide care. The reason this book has been put together, it's a free download, as you can see up here. This is the version for the free download, available in many languages. This one is our new version. It's available for purchase. It's all based on research on creating memory books. So to begin, on the front page, you'll see put a picture of the person in the past, put a picture of the person in the present. Why? Because the person with dementia may recognize this person in the past, but not this person in the present. So when we're doing things, we want to set it up for success. Some people with dementia will recognize themselves in both pictures, but many times, and many of you have probably heard this before, they look at the older person. This is actually my mom's memory book I put together for her when she had dementia. She has since passed away, but I used all these methods in keeping her engaged and cognitively stimulated, cognitively, physically, and socially stimulated until she passed away over 2 years ago. So why do we have these pictures, past and present? They may recognize themselves in the past, but not in the present. So when you look at the picture in the present, many of you may have heard the statement, oh, that's not me, that's my mother. When you put their picture, oh no, that's you. You might be able to teach them that that's what they look like now. That's supporting memory loss. So these books, we collect details, collect photos, past and present photos, so they can see who a person in the past is now in the picture that looks like this person now. Collect the facts and the photos. If you don't have photos, do an internet search. For example, if somebody does not work, there are no pictures of where that person used to work in the past or the job they used to do, go online and look for something similar. A good example is somebody was putting a memory book together and they said, well, my mom used to be a purchaser for one of the big companies. That company is no longer in operation. But I told them to go online and look for old logos, old pictures from the era when their mother worked in that job. There were lots of examples online. Print one of them and tape it into the book. Or if you use the one up here, it's an electronic copy. You can just drag the photos in, then label it. Label them. I used to work at, and name it. And now you've got a picture and the facts. Now, when somebody looks at the book, they will say, oh, you used to work at, don't ask for details, provide details, and seek opinions. Now we've got details about the person's life that gives us conversation prompts. That meets social needs. It also meets the need to be successful when it comes to remembering facts. The facts are provided, they can now elaborate. This creates brain cascades. When I see a picture and a fact, my brain now will launch new memories that may not have been accessible without the details first. That's a whole other body of research. So now we have the person with their book. Leave the person with the book and a pen, and you will be surprised at how many notations and comments and additional facts the person with dementia will add to the book that you have put together or you have put together with that person. If your loved one is in long-term care, this is a great opportunity when you can't visit to perhaps put this book together and then mail it into them gift wrapped. It's a great surprise and a great gift. If you're living at home with the person, put the book together now. And if you have dementia, talk to others in your circle of family and friends and ask them to put that book together with you. Now teach everybody to look at the book, share a fact, and talk about what's there. Once we address needs, we must think about what this person is interested in. And when I teach DementiAbility methods to caregivers and to care partners and to professionals, I ask them to use a checklist. Find out what this person is interested in doing, what gives them pleasure in leisure, and what would they like to do that adds meaning and purpose. Then, once we know what they would like to do, we need to figure out how hard it has to be. Is it early stages? Is it going to be a little harder? But as they progress and dementia moves along, we may have to modify and make this activity a little bit easier. We're going to change our vocabulary from disability, inability, to dementiability. Let's expose the abilities of those in our care. So now we think about needs, interests, skills, and abilities. Whole person. Do I want to think, connect, combination of it all? Everybody is different. So now when we think about what we're going to do, we're going to use the information from the Let's Talk About Me book. We're going to use any information we have and then make decisions about what to do. And if anybody is sharing what they're doing in an environment where they are living with other people, we must check out the COVID rules at the Public Health Agency of Canada website and make sure things are clean and disinfected before they are shared. So right now I hear from a lot of care partners that, the one thing people are doing is they're connecting on the iPad. So I have some additional ideas, but I also have ideas that can be used while on the iPad. So the first thing I do need to say is we will assess risk. The who in the present and our observations are going to help us make decisions about, is this okay? Is this risky? And if you feel that the person is okay to be left with some of the things we're going to talk about, then I encourage you to leave them to enjoy the activities. The most important thing to focus on is your observations. We have seen that most people, if you see aggression, it's because they're bored. Give them something to do and they will behave appropriately. They will behave as if there is no dementia. So when you're thinking about what to do, begin by, before we go into what we're going to do, let's begin with, would you like to? Let's give them choice. Don't tell them what to do. Would you like to? And then we also talk about in DementiAbility is learned association conditioned behaviors. They've learned they've failed. When you ask, can you do this? They're really responding to an abilities-based question. No, I can. I've learned I cannot. And I've seen many of the things we do, people were actually surprised they were able, if you break it down to their level of ability. And this is why this is called DementiAbility. So now you've invited them, you've shown them what to do and how to do it, you've demonstrated. Now you can leave them with activities that are available and accessible. My mom lived with me at home and I was able to provide her with a great schedule of things to do. When she moved into long-term care for the last few months of her life, I created a kit, a cart. So now she knows what to do. The cart triggers the doing. And you could see the look on her face when I would visit that she had actually been doing something because she looked brighter than if she had had nothing to do. So if you are going to set up an environment for those in your care, there are Alzheimer's Society chapters here in Ontario that actually do create bins with activities in them that are actually ziplocked that people can borrow. During COVID, this has been more of a challenge. So if you're living at home, what you might want to do is create activities, label them, put them in a Ziploc bag if you want to, and label them according to what's in the bag, and have them available for your loved one to engage in just by putting them out on a table. Show them what to do, how to do it, and then leave them. And then when it goes out, eventually they will often just go to the activity. So you could have a book stand with books to read, which I'll talk about in a minute. If you're in a shared environment, we do have laminated books. We also have paper copy books. And if you're at home and you have a bookcase, you may be able to put your activities out like this. So when your loved one is looking for something to do, you can actually take the activity out, put it on a table, and get them started. So the next thing I want to just mention before we go any further is that this is a time to keep hands washed. And if you go to my website, you'll see some resources under hand hygiene. And this is particularly important during the pandemic. So if you can find activities where they actually are washing their hands, washing the items, they are also washing their hands. So this is an example of an activity that is put in a Ziploc bag and then it's put out on the table for the person to do. Now, you could put this cutlery right into the sink, or if they can't get up to the sink, put it on a table if they have to be seated on the table with a towel and ask them to wash the cutlery and put the cutlery away. How you do this activity is totally based on abilities, and that's what we're going to talk about as I move through this presentation. Some people may only be able to work with the spoons. Eventually, they may be able to sort the spoons, then the spoons and forks, and then the spoons, knives, and forks. Use your observations to guide you, to help you understand what your loved one is able to do. Now, as I move forward in the presentation now, I want you to think about having a 7-day plan. As I present some of these ideas, I want you to think about maybe that my loved one could do this in the morning on a Monday. This could be after lunch on a Monday. This could be in the evening. If you can create a 7-day plan, Monday mornings we'll do this, Tuesday mornings we'll do this, and one thing could be done every single day of the week. Every morning of the week we do this. Now you have a plan. This lifts a lot of burden off of care partners because it's coming up with ideas that can sometimes take the greatest amount of thinking and energy. So create a 7-day plan and then come back to Monday again next week. Modify as you go forward, adapt according to the abilities, but this makes it so much easier. What I did when my mom lived here is I had a dry erase board and a pegboard in my kitchen with the plan for the week. Once I got that operational, it was so much easier. The other option I would recommend for you is that if you don't want to do it this way, get a dry erase board and put a notation about this, whatever today is. Today we will, whatever, and leave any notations on the dry erase board and any messages. I used to have a message that just said, "Mom, I'm in the basement. I'll be back up soon. Call down through the stairs if you need me." She was safe. She could do that, but that prevented her from leaving out through the front door. So make sure you have lots of memory supports in place as you move forward. So let's talk about what we can do. Doing, connecting, and thinking. What are the options for those living with dementia? One of the things we teach is that many people with dementia, if they could read before they had dementia, they can still read now. So that's a surprise for a lot of people. The reason they don't read is often because the size of the font is too small or the story is too complicated. We sell books that are set up for success. It's large print. The words in our printed copies are only on one side of the page. So when you turn the page, you're in the right place. We have some free downloads, such as Time for Tea. I did this one with the Tetley Tea company. So if you want to try them out, there's a number of free ones under free downloads on my website. There's also ones to purchase, hard copy. If you've already started using iPads or tablets, they're also available through Amazon on Kindle. So these ones, if you purchase them, just put into amazon.ca, readers DementiAbility, and these readers should come up. We have 7 in total, and now your loved one could read them on the screen. And the reason I was saying moving beyond iPads, if somebody at the other end can be on the phone with them, they could read the book to the other person at the other end of the phone. The other thing I have on my website is, what is COVID? A lot of people with dementia are not understanding why they can't go out, what's going on. And the other problem is, if the paid care partners or family come in to visit and they've got a mask on, how about we put a name badge on that has a picture of the person and their name? And then over here, this is on my website as well, free download, upper left area of the website. You could laminate this, pass it to the person and say, do I look funny? I am here to help. And now we have a picture of the person and help them to understand who is under the mask. And there's all kinds of messaging boards about what COVID is. I'm wearing this mask because of a virus called COVID. This helps set the person up for success. The posters give somebody something to do, and it helps reduce repetitive questioning if they understand what is going on and why. So for example, this poster explains why we have to wear a mask. It's very visual. When people cough or sneeze, droplets fall on things and on people. That contributes to the spread. So have a look at the website, use what's important for you and your loved one to help them understand what's going on with the pandemic. We also have a book that can be read, free download. This one is for if you are living at home. Print the book, make sure it's on one side of the page only, not 2 sides. Print the book and read it with your loved one. And then when you're done, just leave it out, put it on a table. And when they're asking about what's going on or why, ask them, would you like to read this book to learn more about this pandemic? If they're in long-term care, we have this book, and it's very clear on our website. Book for people living in long-term care, book for people living at home, upper left-hand corner, free COVID resources. This one, because also the brain matters, people with dementia are often concrete thinkers. Telling somebody to stay 6 feet apart is not concrete enough for people to understand with dementia. So sometimes what we need is very concrete thinking, such as stay at least a hockey stick apart, a broom handle apart, the length of 2 arms apart. That helps somebody to better understand. So print this and help them to understand what it means to stay away from people who are not living in your space. The other thing I want you to think about is how hand washing is particularly important at this point. We have a number of hand washing signs on our website, and we do need to encourage people to wash their hands. And the research says that generation hadn't learned early in their life to wash their hands in the same way that people in the later years, such as I think it actually was introduced as a public health, and I may be wrong here, but like the 1960s or 70s or 80s. It's a lot later than we think. So what I'm trying to do is help people to remember to wash their hands and to wash it for long enough. And again, the concrete thinking. People with dementia cannot connect happy birthday with washing their hands. Why would you sing happy birthday in the bathroom? So what I've done is I found a song that might be familiar to many people of that generation, And many of you may know this song from earlier years. Do you remember the song, I'm going to wash that man right out of my hair? Let's sing, I'm going to wash those germs right out of my hands. I'm going to wash those germs right out of my hands. Sing it 3 times and then sing, and dry that water away. I know I'm not a good singer, but if you could post this in the bathroom and get people singing the song, I'm going to wash those germs right out of my hands, this contributes to reducing the spread. The next thing I want to tell you about is I have, this is called our Work It series. And my goal here is to work the brain. We sell them laminated. I'm not sure how many are out and available in your different communities. You can purchase them so they are laminated and use a dry erase marker to put the answers in. Or you can go to my website and just download them and print copies, laminate them yourselves as well. But these ones have been set up for success. So I want you to think for a minute. If I ask you a question, what is the capital of Taiwan? Can you answer that question? Let me ask the question again. What is the capital of Taiwan? Is it Taipei or is it Toronto? When I give you 2 answers, I have now set you up for success. So if you give, this is our trivia book, what was named the 50th state of America in 1959? If the person with dementia, and I have done this with people in the latest stages of dementia, is it Ontario or is it Hawaii? If the person with dementia says Ontario, you don't need to say, no, you're wrong. You could just say, good job. Does it really matter? The success has come in stimulating the brain through reading the questions and taking a stab at thinking and answering the question. Who played the Joker in the original Batman television series featuring Adam West? Was it Cesar Romero or Donnie Doolittle? Again, the answer is somewhat obvious for many people, but if the answer is not chosen that is correct, does it really matter? My goal is to, as often as possible, say, good job, well done. So when we think about abilities, we also have the spelling challenge. Earlier stage dementia, you could give them the 3 words. How do you spell daughter? And pick the word. This one's blurry, but this one is showing you the easier ones are 2 words. So with everybody, you might want to start with the 2 words and then gradually move up to 3 words. Some people will never be able to move past the 2 words, but that's okay. We've set them up for success. We also have word searches. I don't have a picture in here, but what I will say is if you do the word search challenges, again, you're stimulating the brain, and this is critically important in dementia care. The answer pages are for the answers of the word search, but we found when we were testing these products that somebody later stage of dementia we thought would not be able to do these word searches, reached over, grabbed the book, grabbed the dry erase marker that was on the table and started doing the word searches. And she used the answer sheet to find the words. She started circling the words that were the answers. That was success. Another thing you can do is just get yourself a deck of cards. You could ask people to please sort the cards. So you have you create a template, put the diamond, the heart, the spade, and the club, and ask them to put all of the suits in a pile. Then take the ace of spades and put it to the side and ask them to see if all the cards are there. There is some excellent research that says that it is extremely important to count. This provides an activity that gets them counting. Another way to use a deck of cards is to play highest card wins. Highest card wins is actually a game of war. And you can actually do this if you can't have people come into the home, play it over the iPad on Zoom or Skype or whatever it is, whatever format you're using. Person with dementia has a deck of cards, the person at the other end has a deck of cards, and you both flip over and show each other what the card is on the screen. And the highest card wins. That's what the game of war is. I don't tend to use the word war because that can trigger negative outcomes for some people with dementia if it triggers bad memories of the war. If your loved one, that does not happen, then it's okay to call it the game of war. I call it highest card wins. It's a great game to use for those living with dementia. Another activity that you can do is just put 12 numbers on a page, laminate the page, get a set of dice and a dry erase marker, laminate it. So now, do I take off the 4 and the 3, or do I take off a 7? Doesn't matter. Whatever way you want to play the game, that is success. I have played this with people later stages of dementia. Rolling the dice is easy. You can help with the circling or X off with each number that you get. It's a great game for people with dementia. So that was doing and thinking. Let's now talk about connecting. One of the things that I do a lot of is I talk about alternative connection. Some people living at home may still have animals, but if they do not, and the needs to love and belong and nurture are not being met, we can find alternative ways. So in the teaching I do, I talk about how you use the WOW model. It's basically in this section, it's who they were and who they are isn't as important as your observations. I hand the doll or the stuffed animal to somebody and say, look what I have. And now I want to see if they put their hands up and say, nope, not for me, or they pull it in and embrace it and ask if it's real, or don't talk about whether it's real or not, and they engage as if it's real. The research that we've done has shown that, especially in the later stages of dementia, this little guy, actually, you press its paws and it sings, it talks, you can program it with the person's name. We have had amazing outcomes, and it's because it's a robotic. In dementia care, robotics have had great success. This doll is not a robotic. This woman engages with that doll as if it was real. One of the things to watch for under O for observations is some people get very upset if the baby's eyes don't close. That person obviously thinks it's a real baby. And what I'm going to talk about right now is I want you to think about this alternative connection in relation to the undeveloping brain. We develop in an upward way and we undevelop in a downward way. If the person is undeveloping and right now their brain needs to be nurtured and loved and give love, this may be why doll therapy is so successful. So some people say, well, is that right to give person a doll when they're an adult? Well, if this meets their needs, and that comes into needs, interests, skills, and abilities, they need love. They need to nurture. They're interested in this, and they have the ability to connect with the doll or stuffed animal or robotic, then we've met the needs. Ethics is do no harm. DementiAbility says, let's meet the person where he or she is. So this is why it is so successful. The other way we can connect, some of you may have the Let's Chat books in the kit that has been distributed in your area. And if not, it may be available through your Alzheimer's chapter, or it's also available on our website. Each page has questions. So if you're connecting with somebody doing Zoom or whatever connection you're doing, whatever platform, you could use the conversation prompts to help stimulate conversation. So for example, one of the questions, we used to use this all the time with my mother. And if we had everybody at home for dinner, we would all take turns answering the same question. And then when it came her turn, some of the answers were quite interesting and amazing. So if they can't remember a fact, help fill in those details a bit and say, well, Mom, didn't you go to such and such a school? Oh, yes, that's right. And your best friend was Barb. Oh, yes. And now you see everything move forward in the conversation. The Let's Chat can be used one-on-one at home. It can be used over any form of electronic connection. Another thing that we have done is we've created these look at this and reminisce, and I believe you have these as well. These are conversation cards as well, but they can be done. You don't have to do it with somebody else. You can leave cards with somebody, maybe one a day, maybe two a day. So have a look at this one. Which of these photos remind you of going to a diner? Well, does this one? And just seeing the pictures in front of you. This is look at this and reminisce. This stimulates the brain and engages a person living with dementia. Another thing that I believe is important for everybody in dementia, and I want to try it whether they have been interested in art in the past or not, is coloring books. Watch this video and I'll explain why our books are different.
DementiAbility focuses on exposing abilities. You may be familiar with our large print books for dementia. Well, now we are excited to introduce you to our newly released coloring book series, Color and Create. These coloring books have been created to set people in all stages of dementia up for success. But hey, we found out that people of all ages want to color what we have created. A number of our coloring books have been designed with a black background for those who might be concerned about going over the lines. If this would suit your needs, check out our book titles, Flowers, Shoes, Sports, Shapes, and Sports Equipment. Each book in our series has a variety of different pictures with images for people with different interests and different abilities. So get out your markers, your paints, your watercolors, pencil crayons, and enjoy. Have fun.
So these books have been set up for success. And the way they came about was when my mom had dementia, because I always believe I want to engage people in the creative arts. I found something with a black background for her to color, and she enjoyed it. She did a great job. And then I found another piece of art that did not have the black background, and she wouldn't do it. I came back one day, she was in long-term care by this time, and I came back and I said, oh, you don't seem to be working on your art. And she said, oh, I don't like doing it. I went, oh, okay. And then I looked closely at the piece of art and I could see what had happened is she'd gone outside the lines and she had tried to erase it with her finger. She tried to scratch over it. It was actually quite a mess. And I thought, I did not set her up for success. So when Mike Brown contacted me and asked if I'd like to create coloring books, I said, some of them will not have a black background such as this one, but some of them, like flowers and fish and shoes, have a black background for those who need that to feel successful. These are available on our website. The other thing as an activity to do, and you could do this you have to have your computer or iPad or phone, is search the DementiAbility Pinterest options. We have lots that stimulate the memories. A lot of people really just love them. So now let's focus on doing. What can this person do physically? Well, the easiest way to sort socks is they're all the same color. If a person is more able, we can give them different types of socks. We can give them a whole bin of laundry to fold. This is how we must always enable abilities, is understand what they're able to do and set them up for success. We have this activity that is please fold the towel, and now we give them a warm face cloth at mealtime to wash their hands and face, much better than the tissue. If you have somebody in your care who is in late stage dementia, put the warm cloth in their hand and ask them to pull it out. It's sensory stimulation and infection control in one. There's other physical activities that, especially at this time of the year, you could have people with dementia untangle Christmas lights, put the rope back on the spool, wind up wool. Go to your dollar store, your home hardware store, any store that has wooden products. And I've used this project right up to the late stages of dementia. Anything as small as a wood product from the dollar store or a bigger project. Out in British Columbia, I had a group actually sand down a dressing table, stain it, and varathane it. And now it's ready and beautiful and ready to be used. If somebody loved sports, how about having them sort hockey cards, sports cards? I buy the sports cards at the dollar store, at Walmart. I buy the sleeves at the dollar store. And now you've got an activity for somebody that loves to be engaged. Another way to do this is with photos. For those in the later stages of dementia, and we talk about this in our workshop, is just sorting things like clothespins, sorting anything, snapping them along the side because they need to have that hand grip. And you tell them this is to help them so that their motor movements, arthritis is bad in late stage, help them to keep those hands working. It's a physical exercise. They could also string beans or sort them, or beads, beads, and poker chips. We've had lots of success. You could even wash the poker chips. If somebody is from a country where they love mahjong, you could do the same thing with mahjong tiles. You could also ask people to sharpen pencils, put pencil crayons away. And if you want more ideas, go to my website. Oh, actually, they're going to post this afterwards at the end of the workshop. They're going to post the link to this. I've worked with Behavioral Supports Ontario to put this together for COVID. Here's a wide range of activities that will give you new ideas about what to do with your loved one living with dementia. Remember, think about how to put activities together for morning, afternoon, and evening, 7 days of the week. Let's remember that we have to think about giving people predictability and memory supports so we can set them up for success. Sometimes our activities need to be made easier, sometimes harder, sometimes different activities, same level of ability. Some people have said, my loved one got better using these activities, because a lot of what we see in dementia is not because of dementia, it's because of disuse. Become DementiAbility engagement experts. Become DementiAbility boredom busters. Become ability enablers. And just as a piece of information, I am going to be doing a full DementiAbility caregiver workshop beginning, I think it's November 30th, and it will be 7 different days for us to have 7 different sessions, 1 hour and 15 minutes. I stay on the line till for 1.5 hours to answer questions at the end. And when you take the workshop, you get this new book I've just finished writing, Thinking Differently About Dementia. That is my mom and I on the cover of my new book. If you're interested in the book, you can go to our website as well and order that under our store. So this is just an introduction to some of what I teach about brain and behavior in dementia care. Thank you very much. We're now going to go back to Dina, I believe, and answer some of the questions in the question box.
Thank you so much, Gail. That was such a wonderful presentation. So now we're going to start with the Q&A session. So I'm just going to remind everybody that there is a little icon at the bottom of your screen with the Q&A there, and you might have to move your mouse around just to activate that. And again, if you would prefer to be anonymous when asking your question, then please select the anonymous option before entering your question. So please go ahead and add some questions in. And while we wait for people to put questions in, Gail, I just would like to ask you, with your mom, what did you find was an activity that she really enjoyed doing? Out of, you have so many options out there, which ones did your mom really enjoy doing?
Well, my goal was to provide, one of the things is you never want to give them the same thing all the time. So I had different things for different days. So some of the things I did were about every 2 weeks, I would have her polishing silver. She did a terrible job. It was awful. However, what I would say is, good job, Mom. The other thing is I had to teach her how to, once again, help in the kitchen. She had lived in independent living before she came to live with me. So using what I teach, do you make it easier, harder? Who was she? She loved to cook. So she couldn't remember how to peel vegetables, but I knew that was disuse. That wasn't dementia. So I would teach her how to peel the carrots. And eventually she was peeling the whole thing. You start with the easiest and then we move up. She was eventually able to peel everything again.
Wow.
She also loved, I at the time was able to buy dolls that didn't look very cute. So I would go buy out baby outfits for us to sell the baby outfits on the doll. Her job, her favorite job was to dress the dolls. And as the dementia progressed, she did very well, very well. But when she moved to long-term care, she had gotten to the point I had to consider long-term care because I couldn't support her anymore with some of the physical things she was doing. I was afraid things were going to go poorly. She moved to long-term care and she did very well there. And when I had her come back, it was her physical health, her breathing was really bad. I had her dressing the doll one day and you could see the workout. She was breathing like it was like she was running a marathon. And it was really interesting to see that we had maintained the abilities right through to the end stages. One of the last things she did, so we had her reading, and one of the day, I think it was the day before she died, she was in long-term care. She was actually in her book club. They ran it. Yeah, so she was actually in her book club. And 2 days before that, she loved her jewelry. So she had a whole box at her jewelry box full of, old costume jewelry. And I took it into the nursing home and she sorted it. So I had her doing things that I knew she loved in the past. So what did she do here? It was always finding something that there was a schedule of what would happen each day.
That's amazing.
That's how you maintain the abilities of those in your care.
Wow, that's amazing. Thanks for sharing that experience, especially that it's a personal one. So appreciate that. So as we've been talking, we now have some questions that have come in. We have, a first question here that says, if we are dealing with dementia and depression/psychosis, which came first, mood can be completely different from one day to the next. Do you still encourage activity when she is despondent and wanting to stay in bed?
So this is, and again, it's so hard to respond to this question because I want to know who she was in the past. Is this a lifelong mental health problem or is it new? Because what happens, and this is what we teach in our DementiAbility workshop, is you have to treat the treatable, reverse the reversible. You have to know who that person was before so that we can figure out what we're going to do now. So what we talk about in one of the very first sessions, we cover off what happened when they were diagnosed with dementia. This will provide me with a lot of insight on how to answer that question. Because if the person has insight, so they've been diagnosed with dementia, they have insight, whether or not they have had depression in the past, this is now where I'm going to focus. They may be depressed or more depressed than they were in the past because they worry about what's to come. And if you can't add meaning and purpose to their day, you can't give them a reason to get out of bed in the morning. That may be why they don't want to get up. There's nothing to do and I haven't been successful. Who was that person? What brought them joy? And start with little things. If you get out, so for example, I couldn't get my mom to have a bath many times, especially if I needed a care worker to help me with that. And so I had to do things like, hey, mom, so-and-so is going to come and help you get your bath today and do your hair. And when you're done, why don't we go out for ice cream? But we don't want to go out when your hair's looking like that. It worked.
Nice.
So you connect a positive outcome to getting out of bed. So it depends. That's a very superficial answer. I know, because I would need far more information to be able to answer that in any more depth than that. I hope that helps a little bit. It's a tough one. And the psychosis, I would also be, the other thing we talk about in the workshop is the type of dementia and how what you're seeing is connected to either the diagnosis now or what we know in the past. So is it because it's a Lewy body dementia? What do we know?
Thank you, Gail. The next question is, I work with an indigenous population. I'm wondering if your activities are culturally safe and successful with individuals from different cultures.
So thank you for asking that question. I have worked on, I have been invited onto one of the reservations here in Ontario to work with their group. And you always use the WOW model. Who? It's every single person in your care. It's not the whole group. Who is this person now? Who were they in the past? So I actually, for doll therapy, I actually have a doll in traditional First Nations dress. And we talk about what activities are we going to use, what fits within your culture. So if you're coming up with activities, I get the group to brainstorm what would work with people in your care. And it has to be one person at a time. It's about who this person is now. And that's what when you say body, mind, and spirit, it's culture, religion, and it's social connection under that last component of it. It's not really last, it's the third component. So you have to look at who is in your care. So yes, these methods work because it's focusing on who the person is and developing things based on your observations and what you know from the past. So yes, the answer is yes, it works.
Thank you. Are there any special considerations for people with aphasia?
Yes, that's the other thing we teach is if a person has, when we talk about communication strategies, and when this is a big topic. So what we teach in the workshop is some people can express themselves, but they can't understand what the conversation's about. Some people can't express themselves, but they can understand what's going on at the other end. Some people can't use words anymore, but they can read them. Some people can understand, but they can't read anymore, but they can understand pictures. So with aphasia, you have to look at what the mix is. So for example, if you look at the conversation cards that are all the pictures, look at this and reminisce, they might be able to point if you talk. So it depends on what is going on. So I would need, again, you need to look at who the person is right now, who were they in the past, and use your observations to decide which technique. So for example, we talk about conversation cards. So we have a lot of strategies we talk about that would work based on different abilities. And that's why it's called DementiAbility.
Thank you, Gail. So our next question is actually related to aphasia as well. It says, my husband has lost his words and it is also hard to know how much he understands. Are there some activities for his advanced state?
One of the things that I would encourage you to try is, if you don't want to buy them, download a couple of our free readers. We have one about Mayor McCallion. It's the mayor of Mississauga. We have one about the Nickel City, which is Sudbury. We have Tetley Tea. Try them. Read to him and watch him. I have read with somebody in the very latest stages of dementia, and she actually ended up reading the whole book. So and there was somebody a husband in a nursing home. This woman was very late stage. And when I asked him if he'd like to read to his book, he said, oh no, she's way beyond that. And I said, would you like to try? And I asked what kind of things she would enjoy. So I went and got one of the books that's about the Queen. And he sat and he read to her, and her finger followed along every line. He said, she said 3 words. I haven't heard her say a word in months.
Wow.
It's finding out what they're able to do. And unfortunately, what most people think they know about dementia is not accurate. They don't understand where they're able to do far more if we adapt what we're doing to abilities. And that's why I call my business DementiAbility. There's a whole body of research on the disability that comes from disuse. So with the people who can't really communicate anymore, there's also things you can do, like I was saying about sanding something, painting something. Unbelievable what is possible if you just understand brain and behavior. And who that's why it's brain, life story, environment, having things to do in the environment that triggers. Hopefully.
Thank you, Gail. Thank you. We have a comment from the first person who asked the first question, said, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Now, I have here someone that is asking about how big was your whiteboard?
My whiteboard was just, I don't know, 18 inches by a foot. And I am sorry, it's normally sitting right here. Oh, here it is, I hit it. Can you see the size of it? And this I would put on the coffee table. Sometimes it would be, we had a dog at the time that if like for example, one time my mom was asleep, and I thought I'll put the dog in his little house. A friend was going to be dropping by, and on the top of it, it said, "Mom, I've got to take my husband Bob to hockey. I'll be back in 5 minutes," just in case she woke up before I got there. And on it says, "Baxter is sleeping. Please do not let him out," because I didn't like him being out. If somebody came through the door, I didn't want him disappearing. So that worked. So I have taught people to put down the facts for the day too. So if there's something they want to know, for example, we're going out tonight for dinner with Gail. We're going out to get groceries. The other thing I'm going to say about the dry erase board is, once you teach your loved one to use this, if you go, say you have to go somewhere and you're going to be in the car for a while, take it with you. We are on our way to Susie's. Now they won't be asking, where are we going? What are we doing? Think of it this way. The brain, the memory bank is closed sometimes. Put the deposit out here on the dry erase board. That's a really good question. Thank you for asking that.
Thank you for explaining that, Gail. Those were all fantastic questions. So thank you to everyone for asking those, and for Gail for sharing her experience with us. I'm just mindful of the time and everyone else's schedule. So if there aren't any more questions, I think I'm just going to move on to towards the end of our presentation. I'm just going to switch screens here, so bear with me as I do that. And I'll just move. Okay. All right. So thank you, Gail, so much for taking the time out of your busy schedule to present this valuable information. We know that it will help many, many people. And again, our thanks to Logan Funeral Home and Evans Funeral Home for the support of today's webinar. So as we can see, we have some upcoming webinars. This webinar was our first monthly webinar of the series. So in the coming months, we think we have got a great lineup of speakers. And as I mentioned on the slide here, we are going to be offering some great resources for those going through the dementia journey. Be sure to visit our website, alzheimerslondon.ca, in the education zone for announcements of new speakers and topics. You can also subscribe to our mailing list on our website on the very bottom of your page to receive these notices. Thank you to everyone who attended this Brain Matters webinar. When you leave the webinar, you will be asked to complete a short evaluation. Please take a minute to fill this out, as it helps us to plan for future events. This now concludes our webinar for today. Please click the red leave icon button on your screen. Thank you for joining us. Enjoy the rest of your day and stay safe. Bye for now. Take care.